You can still leave with some dignity." Victoria Langford said it softly, but the softness did not make it kind. It landed across the ballroom like a blade wrapped in velvet. For 1 second, the entire fundraising gala froze. The crystal chandeliers kept glowing. The string quartet kept playing somewhere near the marble staircase. Servers in black jackets still held silver trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, but the air had changed. The room was no longer elegant. It was watching. Danielle Brooks stood beneath the warm gold light with a deep red wine stain spreading across the front of her ivory dress. Victoria stood in front of her with an empty glass in her hand. No apology. No shock. No shame. Just a thin smile, the kind wealthy women used when they believed cruelty sounded better in a lower voice. Around them, a few donors turned their heads. A man near the stage lowered his program. A woman at the silent auction table stopped writing her bid. Someone whispered, "Did she do that on purpose?" Victoria heard the whisper and still did not move. She tilted her chin toward Danielle's stained dress. "This is a private event," she added. "Not everyone understands how these rooms work." That sentence was worse than the wine. The wine had ruined fabric. The sentence tried to assign place. Danielle did not step back. She did not look down at the stain. She did not raise her voice. She simply stood there, still and composed, her shoulders straight, her face unreadable, as if the insult had arrived late to a trial where the verdict had already been written. Victoria waited for embarrassment. She expected anger. Maybe tears. Maybe a trembling explanation. Maybe a desperate reach for status. She got silence. And that silence unsettled her. Because Danielle Brooks did not look like a woman who had been humiliated. She looked like a woman collecting evidence. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Danielle. The gala was being held inside the Harrington Grand Ballroom, a historic event space on the 42nd floor of the Langford Tower in downtown Chicago. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city burned with night traffic and river reflections. Inside, everything was polished. Gold-rimmed glasses. White roses. Black tuxedos. Diamonds hidden beneath soft lighting. A room designed to make power feel natural. Danielle had arrived alone at 7:08 p.m. No entourage. No security detail. No designer logo screaming from her purse. She wore an ivory evening dress, a black tailored coat, pearl earrings, and simple heels. Her hair was pulled back neatly. Her makeup was soft. Her posture carried a quiet confidence that did not ask to be noticed. That was part of the point. She had spent 20 years learning how people treated her before they knew her name. Tonight, she had come as herself, but not as a headline. Not as the founder and CEO of Brooks Meridian Group. Not as the woman whose company owned majority control of the very tower they were standing in. Not as the silent investor behind the Children's Medical Equity Fund this gala was supposedly celebrating. Just Danielle. A black woman entering a room that had been taught to respect money only when it arrived in familiar packaging. The first slight came at the entrance. A junior hostess named Paige looked down at the guest list, then up at Danielle, then down again. Name: Danielle Brooks. Paige searched. Her finger stopped. Her eyes moved quickly over the screen. "You're listed," she said, but her tone made it sound like a problem. Danielle offered a small nod. "Thank you." Paige did not hand her a welcome card. She did not explain the auction table. She did not mention the VIP reception near the south balcony. She simply gestured vaguely toward the ballroom. "Coat check is around the corner. Staff entrance is farther down if you're working with catering." Danielle looked at her. Not sharply. Not coldly. Just long enough for Paige to hear herself. "I'm a guest." Paige's cheeks tightened. Of course. But she still did not smile. Danielle moved past her without another word. Inside the ballroom, the same pattern repeated in softer ways. A donor blocked her path without saying excuse. "Me." A server offered champagne to the couple beside her, then turned away before reaching Danielle. Two men near the donor wall glanced at her dress, then at her wrist, then at her face with the subtle arithmetic of people calculating whether a stranger belonged near them. Danielle saw all of it. She always saw it. But she did not come to be comforted. She came to listen. 3 months earlier, her executive office had received 5 separate complaints about the Langford Foundation Gala Committee. Donors of color had been redirected away from VIP areas. Black vendors had been asked for badges after white vendors walked through unchallenged. A young physician from Detroit had been told her invitation was probably transferable and asked to wait near the elevators while her credentials were verified. The complaints had been dismissed as misunderstandings. Victoria Langford, chair of the Gala Committee and heir to the Langford name, had personally signed off on the final report. No pattern found. No misconduct identified. No further action required. Danielle had read those words twice. Then she had closed the folder and said to her assistant, "Put me on the attendance list." Regular guest. No announcement. No escort. Her assistant had paused. "You want to attend anonymously?" "No," Danielle said. "I want to attend honestly." Now, standing in the center of the ballroom with wine bleeding down her dress, she understood that the report had not been careless. It had been a cover. Victoria Langford had approached her 15 minutes earlier near the south balcony. "I'm not sure we've met," Victoria said, though her eyes had already judged the answer. "Danielle Brooks." Victoria's smile paused. "Not recognition. Evaluation. And which table are you with?" "Table 3. That was the first crack. Table 3 was not for casual guests. It was reserved for major donors, board members, and institutional partners. Victoria looked toward the table, then back at Danielle. "Table 3 is full. There is a seat under my name. I'm sure there has been a mix-up." Danielle's gaze remained steady. "There hasn't." Victoria's smile thinned. "These events can be confusing when people receive invitations through secondary channels. Mine came directly from the board." "Which board?" There it was. Not curiosity. A challenge wearing perfume. Danielle did not answer immediately. A man beside Victoria gave a small laugh into his drink. Another woman pretended not to hear but leaned closer. "The foundation board," Danielle said. Victoria's eyes moved down Danielle's dress again, then to the simple clutch in her hand. "That's interesting." The word interesting had weight. It meant unlikely. It meant suspicious. It meant explain yourself. Danielle only said, "It is." Victoria's smile did not survive that. She stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to make the insult feel private while keeping it audible to the people around them. "Look, I don't know who let you in, but this evening is important. There are donors here who have supported this work for decades. We cannot afford disruptions. Then don't create one." The sentence was calm. Too calm. Victoria's face tightened. "Excuse me." "You heard me." The man beside Victoria stopped smiling. Victoria picked up a glass of red wine from a passing tray. For a moment, she said nothing. She just held the glass, watching Danielle with the bored impatience of someone used to doors opening before she touched them. Then she leaned in as if to pass, her shoulder brushing Danielle's arm. The wine tilted. The red spread across ivory. A small gasp rose from somewhere behind them. Victoria did not apologize. Instead, she looked at the stain and said, "You can still leave with some dignity." That was where the room froze. That was where the mask slipped. Danielle looked down at the stain for the first time. Not because she cared about the dress. Because for a second, the red looked like memory. She was 23 again, standing in a bank lobby in Atlanta in a navy suit she had saved 3 paychecks to buy. She had just closed her first commercial property deal. The teller looked at her check, then at her, then called the manager without explanation. The manager asked where the money came from while 3 people behind her listened. She was 29 again, walking into a private club for a development meeting. The receptionist told her deliveries went through the rear entrance. She had a folder full of permits in her hand and a loan approval letter in her bag, but the woman never asked for her name. She was 36 again, seated at a conference table while a contractor explained her own building plans back to her slowly, as if ownership was a language she could not speak. Every room had a different carpet. Every insult wore a different suit. But the message never changed. You don't belong here. Danielle inhaled slowly. When she lifted her eyes, something in them had settled. Not rage. Not hurt. Precision. Victoria mistook it for fear. A staff member can help you clean up, she said. Then you should go. Danielle turned slightly, positioning herself under the chandelier light. The stain was visible now to half the ballroom. Phones began to rise. Not all at once. One near the auction table. Another by the bar. A third from a young man in a charcoal suit who had been watching the exchange with growing disgust. Danielle saw the phones. She raised one hand, palm low. Don't film for spectacle, she said. Listen for truth. The young man lowered his phone a little. His name was Marcus Reed, a civil rights attorney invited by one of the medical partners. He had been quiet all evening, used to rooms where silence was often the price of access. But something about Danielle's stillness made him stand straighter. A woman near him, Dr. Layla Grant, whispered, "This is wrong." Danielle heard her. "Then say it louder," she said without looking away from Victoria. Layla swallowed. Then she stepped forward. "This is wrong," she said, voice shaking but clear. "She didn't do anything. You spilled wine on her and told her to leave." Victoria turned sharply. "This doesn't concern you. It concerns everyone who just watched it happen." A low murmur moved through the room. Victoria's face hardened. People love drama when they don't understand context. Danielle's voice cut in, low and clean. "Then let's give them context." Victoria looked back at her. "You are making this unnecessarily complicated." "No," Danielle said. "You made it clear." "I'm making it documented." That was the first time Victoria's confidence flickered. Only for a second. But enough. Danielle reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. She did not rush. She did not shake. Her thumb moved once. The call connected immediately. "Maya," Danielle said. On the other end, her executive assistant Maya Ellison answered without hesitation. "I'm here. Confirm attendance list. Pull all incident reports connected to Langford Foundation events in the last 18 months. Cross-reference donor access complaints, vendor security complaints, and tonight's guest credentials." A pause. Already queued. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Who are you calling?" Danielle did not look away. "Someone who reads the documents you sign." A few people heard it. A few more felt it. Maya's voice came through again, crisp and controlled. "Danielle, I have the attendance record. You are listed as principal donor, table 3, seat 1. Owner-level clearance attached through Brooks Meridian Holdings." Victoria's smile disappeared. Not completely. It tried to survive. But it was wounded. "Anyone can say anything over a phone," Victoria said. "That's true," Danielle replied. "That's why records matter." At the entrance, Paige the hostess suddenly looked at the main console. A red notification had appeared on the event management screen. Her posture changed immediately. She leaned closer, read the update, then looked across the ballroom at Danielle. Her face went pale. Beside the stage, one of the foundation coordinators received the same alert. Then the catering director. Then the head of security. Tiny lights moving through a dark system. Victoria noticed them noticing. That was when fear first entered her eyes. Not fear of Danielle. Fear of losing the room. "This is a misunderstanding," Victoria said, louder now. "Miss Brooks was in an area reserved for board-level guests and I am board-level," Danielle said. The sentence dropped flat. No performance. No ornament. Victoria blinked. Danielle continued. "And you knew exactly what you were doing when you questioned it." Marcus Reed stepped forward now. "I heard her tell you her name." Dr. Layla Grant added, "And I saw you." "Spill the wine." Victoria's head snapped toward her. "Careful." Layla's voice steadied. "No. You be careful." The room shifted again. That was how power changed hands sometimes. Not with a shout. With one witness deciding their fear had expired. Victoria turned toward the nearest security supervisor, a broad-shouldered man named Nolan Pierce, who had been standing by the west columns trying to look invisible. "Mr. Pierce," she said, sharp enough to cut through the string music. "Please escort this woman to a private area until we sort out her credentials." Nolan walked forward. Slowly at first. He had the look of a man who had followed bad instructions before and survived by not asking too many questions. He said to Danielle, "I'm going to need you to come with me." Danielle looked at him. "For what reason?" Nolan hesitated. Victoria answered for him. "Disruption." Danielle's gaze did not move from Nolan. "Did you see me spill wine?" "No, Did you hear me threaten anyone?" "No, Did you verify my credentials?" He swallowed. "Not yet." "Then what exactly are you enforcing?" The question landed so cleanly that Nolan looked down. Victoria's voice sharpened. "Nolan, do your job." And there it was. The old machinery. Someone with a title pointed. Someone with a badge moved. Someone without the right appearance was expected to comply. Nolan reached for Danielle's elbow. He did not grab hard. He barely touched her sleeve. But the moment his fingers made contact, the ballroom gasped. Danielle looked down at his hand. Then back at his face. "Remove your hand," she said. The words were quiet. They were not a request. Nolan removed it immediately. Victoria exhaled with irritation. "This is ridiculous. You're acting as if you've been assaulted." Danielle turned to her fully now. For the first time that night, the softness left her face. "You spilled wine on me. You questioned my place. You tried to remove me from an event I funded. Then you ordered security to touch me when you had no cause. Do not minimize what you just did because your audience changed." The room went silent. Even the string quartet faltered. Maya's voice returned through the phone. "Danielle, I have the Langford contract file. Pending renewal tonight. 7-year partnership. $86 million in facility management, naming rights, and donor coordination." Victoria stiffened. Danielle's eye stayed on her. "Status?" Maya replied, "Still unsigned. Board authorization gives you final approval." That was the second crack. This one everyone heard. A man near the bar whispered, "Final approval." Another said, "Who is she?" The question spread without needing to be repeated. "Who is she?" Victoria heard it too. For the first time, she looked at Danielle not like a problem, but like a door she had opened without knowing what stood behind it. "You can't threaten a foundation contract because of a personal disagreement," Victoria said. Danielle's voice remained calm. "This is not personal." It's documented conduct. You are overreacting. No. I am responding at the correct level. Maya spoke again. Also, the complaints you requested are consolidated. 5 donor access complaints. 3 vendor discrimination reports. 2 security escalations involving black women asked to prove credentials after check-in. All closed by Victoria Langford's office as unverified. The room tightened. Victoria's face lost color. Those were reviewed. Danielle said, by you. By the committee. A committee you chair. Marcus Reed took a step closer. I'd like to go on record as a witness tonight. Layla immediately said, me too. A server near the champagne station raised his hand slightly. He looked barely 25. His name tag read Aaron. I saw it, he said. His manager glared at him. Aaron kept going. And it's not the first time. Last year at this gala, a black surgeon was stopped outside the VIP reception. He had the gold badge. Ms. Langford told us to keep the optics clean. A sound moved through the room. Not a gasp. A rupture. Victoria turned on him. You don't know what you're talking about. Aaron's voice shook. I do. I was the one told to stop him. Danielle looked at Aaron. Thank you. 2 words. They steadied him. Then another voice rose from near the silent auction table. My daughter was told to use the service elevator. Tonight. Everyone turned. An older black woman in a sapphire dress stood beside the auction display, her hand resting on her daughter's shoulder. She's a pediatric cardiologist. She came here after a 12-hour shift. A staff member assumed she was part of the kitchen crew because she was carrying a garment bag. Victoria looked trapped now. I cannot be responsible for every staff interaction. Danielle's reply came instantly. You signed the culture. Don't pretend you didn't manage the consequences. The sentence hit harder than a shout. Victoria opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Danielle lifted the phone slightly. Maya, start protocol Meridian. A hush fell. Maya answered, confirmed. Legal, compliance, and board governance are now live. Audio log active. Contract renewal frozen. Building access audit initiated. Victoria's eyes widened. You are recording this. Danielle looked at her. The building records public event incidents for security. You approved that policy. That was when Paige at the entrance dropped the tablet. It clattered against the marble floor. Everyone turned. Paige whispered, "Oh my God." The event coordinator beside her leaned into the screen, then looked at Victoria with visible panic. On the main console, Danielle's profile had loaded across the administrator dashboard. Danielle Brooks. Founder and CEO, Brooks Meridian Group. Principal owner, Langford Tower Holdings. Majority donor, Brooks Children's Equity Fund. Final contract authority, Harrington Grand Ballroom Renewal. Paige's hand flew to her mouth. Victoria saw enough from across the room to understand. Not all the details. Just the shape of the disaster. Danielle Brooks was not a misplaced guest. She was the reason the room had a roof. But Danielle did not reveal it yet. She let the knowledge move through the room the way truth often moves, first as rumor, then as recognition, then as consequence. A phone rang near the stage. Then another. Then another. Board members checking messages. Sponsors receiving alerts. Staff supervisors watching their access permissions change. The ballroom filled with small vibrations and bright screens. Nobody shouted. That made it worse. Panic is louder when people are trying to hide it. Victoria looked around as if searching for someone who would still stand with her. The man who had laughed earlier avoided her eyes. A donor at table 4 stepped back. Nolan Pierce looked at the floor like he wanted to disappear through it. Danielle remained in place, the stain across her dress now less like damage and more like evidence. Victoria tried again. "Danielle," she said, suddenly using her first name like intimacy could be manufactured in crisis. "Let's step aside and discuss this privately." Danielle's answer came without delay. "You made it public. It will be corrected publicly." Victoria swallowed. "This is a charity event." "No," Danielle said. "This is a mirror." The word settled. A mirror. Because the room was seeing itself now. Not as it appeared in donor brochures. Not as it looked in gala photographs. As it behaved when it thought a black woman had no power. Maya's voice returned. "Danielle, Carla Bennett from Legal is on the line. Board chair is listening. You have full authority to proceed." Victoria shook her head. "Proceed with what?" Danielle finally stepped closer. Not aggressively. Just enough that Victoria had nowhere else to look. "With the consequences." Victoria's lips parted. Danielle turned slightly, addressing the room now. Her voice did not rise, but every corner heard it. For the past 18 months, guests, donors, physicians, vendors, and staff have filed complaints about discriminatory treatment connected to Langford Foundation events. Those complaints were dismissed, buried, or reclassified as misunderstandings. Tonight, I came without announcement to see whether the pattern was real. No one moved. Danielle continued. "It is real." Victoria whispered, "You set me up." Danielle turned back to her. "No. I gave you a chance to treat a woman with dignity before you knew what she controlled. You failed." The silence after that was full-bodied. It had weight. It had witnesses. Victoria's face hardened again, but the old confidence was gone. What remained was survival dressed as defiance. "You can't cancel this partnership over one incident." Danielle's gaze sharpened. "You still think this is one incident because you only count the ones that happen to you?" Layla whispered, "My God." Marcus nodded slowly. Aaron lowered his tray. The older mother near the auction table held her daughter's hand tighter. Danielle lifted the phone. "Maya, read the recommendation." Maya's voice filled the quiet. Recommendation from Brooks Meridian Compliance, immediate suspension of Langford Foundation event privileges within all Brooks Meridian properties, reassignment of pending contract to alternate non-profit partner, independent investigation into prior complaints, and removal of Victoria Langford from all donor-facing committees connected to Brooks-funded initiatives. Victoria looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. "You wouldn't dare." Danielle looked at her for a long moment. "You mistook silence for submission," she said. "That was your last mistake." There it was. The line that changed the temperature of the ballroom. A few guests exhaled like they had been holding their breath for years. Victoria's phone began vibrating in her hand. She looked down. Langford Foundation board chair. Then another call. Her father. Then a message preview from legal counsel. "Urgent, contract renewal frozen. Do not speak further." Danielle watched her see it. "You should answer that," she said. Victoria did not answer. She could not. Because if she answered, the room would know the power had already moved beyond her. If she ignored it, the room would know the same thing. Either way, the performance was over. Maya's voice returned. "Danielle, the alternate partner is ready for reassignment. Chicago Children's Access Coalition has accepted emergency funding terms. Their executive director is available for announcement." The older mother near the auction table gasped. "That's Dr. Ellis's group. They serve the Southside clinics." Danielle nodded once. "They should have had the contract the first time." Victoria's eyes flashed. "You are destroying years of work." Danielle replied, "No. I am removing years of gatekeeping from work that matters." Nolan Pierce suddenly stepped forward. His voice was low. "Ms. Brooks." Danielle looked at him. Speak. He swallowed hard. Security was told to monitor certain attendees tonight. Not by name. By profile. Solo guests. Guests without visible donor badges. Guests who looked, quote, unfamiliar to the room. Victoria snapped, Nolan. He flinched, then kept going. I was told if anyone challenged access near the VIP balcony, we should move them away quietly before donors noticed. The room went still again. Danielle's face did not change. Who gave that instruction? Nolan looked at Victoria. That was enough. But he said it anyway. Ms. Langford. Victoria shook her head. That is not what I meant. Danielle's voice was cold now. Impact does not disappear because intention wants a better outfit. Marcus Reed said, I'll testify to what I heard tonight. Layla added, so will I. Aaron said, I'll give a statement too. One by one, the room began to change. Not everyone spoke. Some were too ashamed. Some were too late. But the silence no longer belonged to Victoria. It belonged to Danielle. And she knew exactly what to do with it. Carla, Danielle said into the phone. A new voice came through, legal, sharp and professional. I'm here, Danielle. Initiate formal notice. Langford Foundation's renewal is denied effective immediately. All pending Brooks Meridian funds assigned to Chicago Children's Access Coalition. Freeze Langford Tower event credits. Begin independent review of all discrimination complaints tied to this committee. Carla replied, confirmed. Documents are being transmitted now. Board chair has acknowledged authority. Victoria's hand tightened around her phone. This is not final. Danielle looked at her. It is not a negotiation. The words were quiet, but they cleared the room like thunder. Victoria's voice trembled at the edge. You cannot make decisions like this without consequences. A few guests exchanged looks. The irony was almost too heavy to breathe through. Danielle stepped closer. That is exactly what this is, she said. A consequence. The word landed. Consequence. Not revenge. Not performance. Not anger. Consequence. The thing people fear most when privilege has protected them from cause and effect. At that moment, the ballroom doors opened. A woman in a navy suit walked in with 2 compliance officers and a folder under one arm. Maya Ellison had arrived in person. She moved with the calm speed of someone who had already finished the hard part before entering the room. The crowd parted. Maya stopped beside Danielle, took in the wine stain, looked at Victoria, then looked back at Danielle. Her jaw tightened. I'm sorry. Danielle said, don't be. We have work to do. Maya handed her a black folder embossed with the Brooks Meridian seal. Danielle opened it. Inside were the contract denial, board authorization, ownership documents for Langford Tower Holdings, and the emergency reassignment agreement. She did not wave them around. She did not perform surprise. She simply held the proof. Then she turned toward the room. For clarity, Danielle said, my name is Danielle Brooks. I am the founder and CEO of Brooks Meridian Group. My company owns majority control of this building and holds final approval over tonight's venue contract, donor partnership, and foundation renewal. I came here because people told the truth and were ignored. Tonight, the truth is no longer being ignored. The reaction was immediate. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, she owns the tower. Paige at the entrance began crying quietly. Victoria's face turned ashen. The man who had laughed beside her took 2 steps away, as if distance could erase association. But the most powerful reaction came from Layla Grant. She smiled through tears. Not because the moment was easy. Because for once, the ending was not denial. Danielle looked at Victoria. You told me I could leave with dignity. But dignity was never yours to offer. The room held the sentence. Then Danielle continued. You do not grant dignity to people when you discover they outrank you. You honor it before you know their title. Applause began near the auction table. 1 person. Then 3. Then 20. It spread through the ballroom slowly at first, then with force. Not the polite applause of donors congratulating themselves. This was different. It carried relief. Anger. Recognition. Years of swallowed comments finding rhythm in open air. Victoria stood. Inside it, motionless. For the first time all night, she was the one being looked at. Not admired. Not obeyed. Seen. Maya stepped forward. Ms. Langford, legal counsel for your foundation has been notified. You are to step away from donor-facing duties immediately pending review. Your access to Brooks Meridian properties for official events is suspended. Victoria tried to recover. You can't remove me from my own foundation gala. Danielle's answer was instant. This is not your gala anymore. Another wave moved through the room. Maya checked her tablet. The emergency host transfer is complete. Dr. Simone Ellis from Chicago Children's Access Coalition is being patched in for remote remarks. The fundraising platform has been redirected. All donations made after this timestamp will support the coalition clinics directly. A man near the stage looked at his phone. It's true, he said. The donation page changed. Another donor checked. Mine too. Victoria stared at Danielle. You planned this. Danielle's face remained calm. I prepared for the possibility that you would be exactly who the complaint said you were. That hurt more. Because it was not an accusation. It was accuracy. Then Paige, the hostess, stepped forward from the entrance. Her face was wet. Her hands trembled. Ms. Brooks, she said. I need to say something. Danielle looked at her. Say it. Paige swallowed. We were told to mark certain guests for secondary verification if they didn't match the donor profile. I did it tonight. I did it to you. I did it to 2 other women earlier. I knew it felt wrong, but I wanted to keep my job. Victoria hissed, Paige, stop. Paige did not stop. No. I'm tired of pretending this was just tone or confusion. It was a system. We all knew. Aaron nodded. She's telling the truth. Nolan added, there was a list. Maya's head lifted. What list? Nolan looked ashamed. A watch list. Not official. Shared through text before events. People to keep away from private donor conversations. Usually names we didn't recognize, people dressed down, people who questioned access. Danielle's eyes narrowed. Pull it. Maya turned to one compliance officer. Now. The officer began typing. Victoria looked like she might faint. This is being exaggerated. Danielle said, then the records will protect you. No one missed the trap. If Victoria was innocent, the records would show it. If she wasn't, they would bury her. 10 seconds passed. Then the compliance officer looked up. We found a shared thread. It includes tonight's guest notes. Maya's voice lowered. Read one. The officer hesitated. Danielle said, read it. He swallowed. Quote, ivory dress, black female, no escort, claims table 3. Watch south balcony. The ballroom went cold. Layla put a hand over her mouth. Marcus said, damn. Danielle did not move. But the room could feel the temperature inside her change. The stain on her dress suddenly looked less like spilled wine and more like a marker placed by a system that had been careless enough to write itself down. The officer continued. There are other entries. References to questionable optics, unknown minority vendor, and keep away from platinum donors. Victoria whispered, that wasn't my language. Maya looked up. Your number is in the thread. Victoria's mouth closed. Danielle stared at her for a long moment. You didn't just fail the test, she said. You designed the test to exclude people. Victoria's shoulders dropped. Not in remorse. In realization. She was out of exits. Danielle turned to the room. Everyone who was flagged tonight will receive a personal apology, full documentation, and an invitation to speak with independent counsel. Any staff member who participated will be reviewed. Any staff member who comes forward truthfully before midnight will be protected from retaliation. Anyone who deletes evidence will be referred to legal. Maya nodded. Confirmed. Then Danielle looked at Paige. You were wrong. But telling the truth now matters. Cooperate fully. Paige nodded through tears. I will. Aaron looked at Danielle. What happens to the gala? Danielle turned toward the stage. The banner still read Langford Foundation Annual Promise Gala. Promise. The word almost mocked the room. Danielle walked toward the stage. Every step was measured. The crowd parted again, this time not out of fear, but respect. She reached the microphone. The string quartet had stopped completely now. The city lights blinked behind her. She stood there in the stained dress, under the banner of a foundation whose leadership had tried to remove her from her own event. She tapped the microphone once. A soft thud echoed. Good evening, she said. No one breathed. Tonight was supposed to be about access to care. Access to treatment. Access to dignity for children and families who are too often asked to wait while systems decide whether their suffering is convenient. But access cannot be the theme of an event where people at the door are being judged by race, clothing, proximity to power, or the assumptions of those holding clipboards. The room was locked on her. So the event is changing. Effective immediately, this gala is no longer administered by the Langford Foundation Committee. All funds from this moment forward will support Chicago Children's Access Coalition and the clinics already doing the work without chandeliers, without velvet ropes, and without asking patients to prove they belong before helping them. A sound rose from the back. Not applause yet. Emotion. Danielle continued. To every guest who was questioned tonight, I apologize. To every staff member pressured into enforcing bias as policy, come forward. To every person who saw something wrong and finally spoke, thank you. Rooms like this don't change because powerful people feel guilty. They change when ordinary courage becomes louder than comfortable silence. Marcus Reed clapped first this time. Then Layla. Then Aaron. Then almost everyone. Victoria stood below the stage, smaller than she had ever looked. Danielle waited until the applause softened. Then she delivered the line that would be repeated in clips by morning. I did not need to look powerful to be powerful. You needed me to look powerless to reveal who you were. The room erupted. Not chaos. Release. Phones rose again, but now they captured not humiliation, but reversal. Victoria turned away, but Maya stepped into her path. Ms. Langford, you need to remain available for counsel. I'm leaving. Danielle's voice reached her from the stage. No, Victoria. You're being removed from authority, not from accountability. There's a difference. The applause sharpened. Victoria's eyes filled, but not with the kind of tears that asked forgiveness. These were tears of a person discovering consequence had a public address system. 2 compliance officers guided her toward a side room. No handcuffs. No spectacle. Just procedure. That made it more satisfying. Because Danielle did not need revenge to look dramatic. She had systems. And systems, once turned toward justice, can be louder than any scream. As Victoria passed, Layla said quietly, you could have stopped this at the first apology. Victoria looked at her, then at Danielle, then at the stain. For once, she had no answer. The side door closed behind her. The ballroom exhaled. But Danielle was not finished. Maya joined her on stage and handed her updated notes. Dr. Ellis is live. A large screen behind the stage flickered on. Dr. Simone Ellis appeared from a modest clinic office, still in scrubs, her eyes wide with emotion. "Ms. Brooks," she said, voice breaking slightly. "We just received the notice. Is this real?" Danielle turned toward the screen. "It's real. The funding is yours." Dr. Ellis covered her mouth. The room watched a woman who had spent years fighting for underserved children absorb what $86 million meant. More mobile clinics. More specialists. More asthma care. More heart screenings. More families treated before crisis. The moral center of the night returned to where it should have been all along. Not prestige. Purpose. Dr. Ellis lowered her hand. "We won't waste it." Danielle smiled for the first time that night. "I know. That's why you have it." The applause this time was different. It was not for Danielle's power. It was for the future that power had just protected. Near the entrance, Paige began helping guests without hesitation now. She checked names carefully, respectfully, without the cold scan of assumption. Aaron resumed service, but this time when he approached the older mother and her daughter, he bowed his head and said, "Doctor, may I offer you both something to drink?" The daughter smiled faintly. One small correction. One visible repair. Danielle saw it from the stage. That was the part people misunderstood about justice. The dramatic moment mattered. But the repair after it mattered more. An hour later, the ballroom looked the same and nothing like itself. The roses were still white. The chandeliers still glittered. The skyline still watched from behind glass. But the social order had been rewritten. The VIP balcony was opened. The staff briefing was restarted under Maya's supervision. Every guest flagged for secondary verification received a direct apology. A private reporting table was set up near the entrance. Legal took statements in a side room. Donors who had remained silent earlier now had to decide whether their generosity was real or just decorative. Some left. No one begged them to stay. Others stepped forward and increased their pledges to the coalition. Marcus Reed offered pro bono legal support for the independent review. Layla Grant introduced Dr. Ellis to 3 hospital partners. Aaron gave a statement about prior instructions. Nolan surrendered the security thread voluntarily. Paige cried twice, then kept working. Danielle changed into a black coat Maya had brought from the car, but she did not hide the stained dress entirely. The red remained visible at the hem, a quiet reminder of what started the reckoning. At 9:42 p.m., Victoria emerged from the side room with her attorney on the phone and her face stripped of performance. She approached Danielle near the west windows. Maya moved to block her. Danielle lifted a hand. "Let her speak." Victoria stopped a few feet away. For a moment, the city lights reflected in the glass behind her, making her look like a woman surrounded by everything she thought she controlled. "You ruined me," Victoria said. Danielle looked at her. "No. I interrupted what you were doing to others. There's a difference." Victoria's jaw tightened. "My family's name built this foundation. Your family's name gave you access. It did not give you immunity. I made one mistake." Danielle's voice lowered. "You still don't understand. The wine was one act. The list was a system. The complaints were warnings. The contract was trust. You broke all of it before I ever walked in." Victoria looked away. For the first time, shame seemed to touch her. Maybe not enough. But enough to silence her. Danielle continued. "You asked me to leave with dignity. Dignity is why I'm still standing here. It is why I didn't scream. It is why I didn't let this become only about you." Victoria's voice cracked. "What happens now? Now you answer questions you used to bury. And after that?" Danielle looked toward the ballroom, where Dr. Ellis's coalition team was now being applauded by donors who had finally redirected their attention toward the actual mission. After that depends on whether accountability teaches you anything. Victoria gave a bitter laugh. You sound merciful. Danielle's eyes returned to her. Don't confuse mercy with restraint. Victoria's laugh died. Maya stepped closer. Miss Langford, your counsel is waiting. Victoria looked at Danielle one last time. This isn't over. Danielle paused. Then she said, it already is. Simple. Final. Clean. Victoria turned and walked away. No dramatic collapse. No screaming. No last insult. Just a woman leaving the center of a room that no longer recognized her authority. That was enough. By midnight, the clips had spread. Not because Danielle asked anyone to post them. Because the truth had witnesses. One clip showed Victoria telling her to leave with dignity. Another showed Danielle saying, dignity was never yours to offer. Another captured Paige admitting the profiling list. Another showed Dr. Ellis learning the funding had been reassigned. But the clip that traveled the farthest was only 9 seconds long. Danielle standing in a stained ivory dress beneath the chandelier. Victoria frozen in front of her. Danielle saying, I did not need to look powerful to be powerful. You needed me to look powerless to reveal who you were. By morning, the Langford Foundation issued a statement. It was careful. Too careful. Words like regrettable, review, and miscommunication appeared where truth should have been. Danielle did not respond online. She responded structurally. At 8 a.m., Brooks Meridian announced a full independent investigation into all Langford Foundation partnerships. At 8:30, Chicago Children's Access Coalition confirmed the emergency funding transfer. At 9:15, the Harrington Grand Ballroom suspended all private events pending equity compliance retraining. At 10 o'clock, Victoria Langford resigned from the gala committee. By noon, 3 former staff members had come forward with evidence of prior guest profiling. By sunset, the story was no longer about wine. It was about a room that finally got caught telling the truth about itself. 3 months later, the Harrington Grand reopened. The chandeliers still shone, but the entrance had changed. There was no velvet rope dividing donors from everyone else. The check-in process had been redesigned. Every staff member completed bias interruption training. Complaint systems were no longer controlled by event chairs. Security could not remove a guest without documented cause and supervisor review. Anonymous profile notes were banned. Donor access was verified by credential, not appearance. Near the entrance, a plaque was installed. Not large. Not decorative. Just clear. Dignity is not conditional. Danielle did not attend the reopening ceremony at first. She arrived 20 minutes late, quietly, in a navy suit and low heels. No announcement. No entourage. At the door, a new hostess greeted her with a warm smile. Good evening, Ms. Brooks. Welcome. Danielle stopped. The young woman did not rush. Did not stare. Did not perform fear. She simply did the job correctly. Danielle nodded. Thank you. Inside, Dr. Simone Ellis was speaking to a crowd of physicians, parents, donors, and clinic workers. Behind her, a screen showed the first results of the funding transfer for new mobile care units, expanded pediatric heart screenings, 2 new neighborhood clinic partnerships, and hundreds of children seen without delay. Danielle stood at the back. She listened. No spotlight. No microphone. No need. Maya found her near the wall. You could sit up front. Danielle smiled faintly. I can see better from here. Across the room, Aaron was now a guest services supervisor. Paige had left event hospitality and joined the compliance training team after cooperating fully with the investigation. Nolan no longer worked security, but but his testimony had helped expose the unofficial watch list across 3 venues. Layla and Marcus had joined the advisory board for access and accountability. And Victoria? She was not there. Her name had been removed from the committee, her role suspended from all Brooks-funded initiatives, and the foundation her family once treated like inheritance was now under independent governance. It was not a perfect ending. Real justice rarely is. But it was a real one. The kind that leaves paperwork. The kind that changes policy. The kind that makes the next person safer. Dr. Ellis finished her speech with tears in her eyes. This funding did not just give us resources, she said. It gave us proof that rooms can change when people inside them stop protecting comfort and start protecting dignity. The applause rose. Danielle lowered her eyes for a moment. Not from sadness. From memory. She thought of the young woman in the Atlanta bank. The receptionist at the private club. The contractor who spoke to her like ownership had an accent he could not understand. She thought of every room that tried to make her explain why she belonged. Then she looked around this room. Different now. Not perfect. But different. Maya touched her arm gently. They're asking if you'll say a few words. Danielle glanced toward the stage. Dr. Ellis was looking at her with quiet invitation. The room turned. Not suspiciously. Expectantly. Danielle walked forward. Slowly. No wine stain now. No insult hanging in the air. But the memory of it was there, carved into the room's new foundation. She reached the microphone. For a moment, she said nothing. The silence no longer felt like tension. It felt like respect. Then Danielle spoke. The night this room changed, people kept asking who I was. A few people nodded. But that was never the right question. The right question was who we become when we think the person in front of us has no power. The room stilled. Because character is not revealed by how we treat the famous. It is revealed by how we treat the unknown. The tired. The quiet. The person dressed simply. The woman alone. The guest whose name we do not recognize. She looked toward the entrance. A building can be owned on paper. But a room is only truly reclaimed when dignity becomes its policy. The applause began softly. Danielle raised a hand, and it quieted. I don't want this place remembered because a woman was humiliated here. I want it remembered because humiliation did not have the final word. Accountability did. Repair did. Purpose did. Her voice softened. That is the work. Not to win one moment. To make sure the next person does not have to survive the same one. No one moved. Danielle looked across the crowd, then delivered the final line with the same calm that had carried her through the worst of the night. Justice does not always need to shout. Sometimes it stands still long enough for the whole room to recognize the truth. This time, the applause was not thunderous. It was deeper than that. It was steady. It was earned. Danielle stepped away from the microphone and returned to the back of the room, where she had always been able to see clearly. Outside, Chicago moved beneath the night sky. Inside, the Harrington Grand continued, not as it had been, but as it had become. A room corrected. A system exposed. A future redirected. And a black woman who never once begged to belong, because she already knew the truth. She had not come to take a seat at their table. She had come to remind them who built the room. And once power revealed itself, everything that depended on her silence finally fell.